Hey everybody, good morning. It's Tuesday. How are you? How's your week going? Welcome to the Data Roundtable, another episode in the series that I'm going to be running for the summer. This is a series where I walk in with no agenda. I'm just here to facilitate conversation on anything that we can talk about as data professionals. Anything you guys want to talk about, I'm here for it. Let me know if there's any interesting articles or tools or anything that's going on in your life that relates to data. Let's talk about it. That's the whole purpose of this. I think that we've been having some pretty good discussions. This format is very unique. So we've been having some pretty good discussions both here on YouTube and on Instagram. So if there's anything on your mind or things that you want to discuss when it comes to data, this is the place for it, right? Where else are you going to find the ability to just be able to talk about anything you want, right? When it comes to data, you never know where the conversation is going to take us. That's part of the beauty of this, right? So thanks so much for being here, and we already have somebody in the chat. Thanks so much. 619. Hi, good evening from Thailand. Good evening to you too. Nice to have you here. It looks like it might be pretty late in Thailand right now, right? I'm guessing it's like 11 p.m. or midnight, something like that. So hope you're doing well. Thanks for being here. Um, Let me know how you're doing out there. I think in Thailand, is it rainy season right now? I don't know. I think it might be monsoon season. No, but anyways, hope you're doing well. Let me know if there's anything you want to talk about or anything interesting you've read. Or again, the whole format is intended to be open to whatever the group ends up discussing that day. We've had conversations about projects. Somebody has brought up a couple of project ideas that they were working on. We've had conversations about jobs. We have conversations about tools. We've had conversations about some of my beefs. That always makes for a good conversation here. Ty in the chat. Ty, how are you, my good friend? Ty says good morning from Dallas. Good morning to you too. Hope you're doing well. It's actually kind of like mid-morning out there in Dallas. But yeah, glad you're doing well. Glad you're here. Let us know how you're doing. If there's anything on your mind, this is the place for it. We can talk about whatever the group wants. Uh, 619 says, yeah, it's rainy season. I have so many concerns and questions here. Well, go ahead. This is the place for it. The whole point here is to come together, listen to other people's opinions, give your own opinion. Very healthy thing to do. Very critical when you're working in a larger data science team. And where else are you going to get this? Right? Nobody else does this, right? That's kind of the whole purpose of why I do this, because I think it's needed. I think it's important in data science. So yeah, let me know what's on your mind. 619. Is there a problem you're running into? A question you have? This is the place for it. On my end, things have been going very well, very busy on my end. I over the last 3 days, I've been responding to these comments I'm getting on my social media about where I'm from. Apparently, I answered one little question about somebody asked me if I was from Egypt. I made a video reply to that. The video is 23 seconds long, and it has caused so many questions and comments. I've never had such an engaged post, and it has nothing to do with data science. So I've been dealing a lot with that. I try to reply to virtually every comment I get across my platforms, so that's been a challenge to keep up with that. I actually started running a contest yesterday for people to guess on where I'm from, because that's very difficult for most people. I don't have an accent when I speak in English, so it's very challenging for people to figure it out. So I'm running that also. Otherwise, things are going great on my end. I make content for a living. Nothing is hard over here on this end. But I hope that all of you are doing well. If you want to just talk about personal things or other things that are going on in your life, go for it. That's certainly part of being a data scientist, right? I often talk to people about how the purest form of data science, or what you're really pursuing in data science, is the removal of bias from your decisions, right? You want to make purely data-driven decisions. Can you always achieve that? No, it's not. That's not always easy to achieve. But that's kind of the purpose. So you have to kind of look at those biases and say, well, where are those biases coming from? Well, they're probably coming from your everyday life, right? From your past experiences, your everyday life, different things that are going on, the way you feel at the time. So that's why I also invite people to talk about other things they want, because guess what? That's probably affecting your work. Something for you to think about. Okay, so 619 says, I'm in high school trying to build a CNN for birdsong classification project. Okay. But basically, I only have fundamental basics, never run a real neural network, so I feel stuck. After dealing with data, I don't know how to continue with the model or what is the right process. Okay. So, couple of questions there. What do you mean by after dealing with data? What have you done so far? Let me know. And also, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to be wrong here. But you said that you're kind of early in this development of this model. You're kind of stuck. You've never run a neural network before. So how do you know that a neural network is the answer here? Isn't it possible that another type of model would be the answer? So I'm kind of like doubting your premise of using a neural network. Like, what verification steps have you gone through to ensure that that's the right approach? So 619, feel free to answer any of those, all of those, whatever order you want. But those are the things that are jumping out at me. Like, how do you know that this is a neural network to begin with? I mean, because you also mentioned specifically CNN. So how are you coming on that conclusion? Help me understand that. Yeah, and I also want to know about like the data itself. I'm assuming it's some sort of audio data, right? But obviously you're doing something with it. So give me more information, 619. But there are a couple of different flags that are popping out at me just from your initial statement there. So let me know. But for anyone else that's joining us in the chat, this is our data roundtable where I invite you to talk about any topic you want. That's the whole point of it being a roundtable, that anybody can bring anything they want to the roundtable. So let me know that you're out there. Feel free to say hello. And we'll see where the conversation takes us. 619 has posted a couple of things related to an algorithm that they're working on. But I'm just kind of curious, 619, where you're going with that. Help me understand that, please. So 619 says, I researched for a bit and found that CNN might be the basic to start, I guess, but I might be wrong. What I've done is conversion to ML spectrogram, which I'm not sure is it work too. Okay. Okay. Well, unfortunately, that only brings more questions, right? Because what kind of search were you doing? Like what were some of the terms you were looking for? And also, how did you come across the determination that it's a Mel spectrogram? So I would encourage you to think of it another way. Like, what is it that you're after, right? Well, I guess you already know that. You know what you're after, but let me start over. I asked the wrong question there. What I encourage you to think about is, what does that data look like to an algorithm, any algorithm, right? because I'm not sold on your premise that this is a neural network problem. And I don't think you should be either, because I don't think you have enough information to know that, right? So I think what you could be asking is, what does my data, and by the way, I'm suggesting this because this is more of a data science methodology approach, right? What does my data look like now? What do I need my data to look for modeling? And then what are the potential models that I could apply to that data? Right? And then you're also going to want to do like standard data cleanup, like, do you is can you assume that the data is labeled according to the different birds? And then do you have equal lengths of data for every bird? Because you'd probably have to like equalize the amount of data, right? Like, if some birds you have 2 minutes, some birds you have 7 minutes, some birds you have 5 minutes, you probably want to standardize on some length, like 2 minutes, right? And then kind of go from there as far as like, okay, well, now that I know that, let me look at potential solutions for this, which may or may not be a neural network. Who knows, right? Ty says, hey, Dennis, I'm going over an ML Ops course that I purchased on Udemy a couple months ago because it was on sale for data scientists. Are there any specific areas in ML Ops one should focus on, just high level? Yeah, that's a great question, Ty. Um, I'm trying to think about kind of like my own experiences and the challenging parts to it. Um, I guess two things come back as an answer, right? The first thing would be, if you're working inside a Python environment, like a Conda environment, have the skills to be ready to package that up and transfer it to another team, right? Because most companies don't really have a dedicated ML ops team. They're probably just using an existing DevOps team. And that's okay. I definitely do not disagree with that approach. So have the ability to know when someone comes knocking on your door and say, okay, give me your files, or your algorithm, know how to package that up and put it in a neat package that somebody else can use. So that means you're packing up your code, your training, and your prediction side, your environment files, and some documentation to help it understand that environment, right? And then you should also be able to speak intelligently about the environment you're using, because they will inevitably have questions, right? They're almost always gonna come back to you and say, "Oh, we don't understand this, we don't understand that." That's almost inevitable. So I would say that's the first thing. The second thing is, make sure that you are working from a command line and Python files, because the next big concern for something like that in ML ops at large corporations is geographic distribution, right? Or distribution across server clusters, right? They're kind of one and the same depending on how you look at it, right? So how do you ensure that your deployment is ready to go across a cluster of servers, not just a single server, right? Because most of us as data scientists are doing local development, right? And that's okay. If you're lucky, you're doing it on a server, right? But I have yet to come across a data science team that is doing their development on a server cluster. So you never know how your code's going to work on a server cluster until you kind of deploy it, right? Until you hand it over to that DevOps or MLOps team. So that's the second thing that comes to mind, Ty. So I'm not 100% sure, what your course covers. Feel free to, send it to me later, email me later. But that's what I would think about. Like, be prepared to package up your code, to hand it over, and then be prepared to handle things like that cluster distribution, um, being able to educate the team on what files they need to back up. Well, you probably want to back up your weights file, right? So things like that, right? So those are the types of things that I would think about, Ty. So let me know if that answers your question or not, and you know how to reach me. So, feel free to continue this, with more questions later or here in the chat, whatever is more convenient for you. 619 says, yep, you're definitely right. I look at the Kaggle competition about bird sound classification, and many top achievers use CNN as a basic, so I just follow them. Well, that's not the worst thing in the world, but that's not ideal, my friend. The world is not Kaggle, right? The world is not Kaggle. So be careful with that. I mean, 619, I think you've been here before, but maybe you've missed some of those content pieces. But I am not a fan of Kaggle because it gives you that false sense of security. Because the world does not operate like Kaggle would lead you to believe, or really kind of trains you to be, right? And also, I mean, if you're copying other people's work, then what good are you, right? You're not being innovative. And what if those other people are wrong? Well, you're just following them over the cliff, right? So be careful with that, right? Copying is not a data science methodology. It's healthy to think for yourself and develop your own ideas and your own view. How are you going to break any new ground or be innovative if you're just following whatever the Google search tells you to do, right? There's a methodology to data science because it can lead to new discoveries, right? Otherwise, who cares, right? Like, you'll never be innovative. You're just a robot copying what is already out there, right? So be careful with that. Be careful with that. It pays to be innovative. It pays to put in your own thought and your own work and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's a different path here. So that's what I would have you think about, 619. What is the data you have? What is it you're trying to achieve? What are the things that you can do to prepare that data for modeling? And then, and that includes like the data cleaning I talked about. And then what models are available to use? Those are all like brand new questions you should be thinking about. It's not just, oh, let me do what this other person on Kaggle did. So put some thought into that, 619. I just wouldn't, I'm not excited about the way about the way you've described your approach so far. So for those of you still joining us in the chat, welcome. This is the Data Roundtable. It's an open discussion format where anybody can bring up anything they want. That's the whole purpose of this. It's valuable for us to be able to listen to each other, to help each other. So let me know what's going on. Feel free to introduce yourself. Feel free to let me know where you're from or any problems you're having or different things that you want to talk about. We're here for all of that. And who knows, the answers don't always have to come from me. Maybe somebody else in the chat will help you with an answer or some guidance. So 619 says, I might be approaching it wrong, but I don't know how I should do to get a real project correctly because I thought jumping into the real project and try the coding is the best way. Well, it is good to do a project, but coding isn't the first part of that, right? I'm going to really put some more thought into this because I want to do this. I don't think people realize, I think people have coding all wrong. Coding is not data science. It's a tool for data science. You could even say it's just a convenience for data science. It's extremely convenient to use code. It's not a requirement to use code. So I am convinced I can teach data science with just pencil and paper. I haven't found the right avenue to do that, and I'd have to switch my camera setups and things like that. But coding is not data science 619, right? It's a massive mistake to say, oh, I want to be a data scientist. Let me jump into Python. Let me look up this library. Because that's not data science. Data science is an approach. It's a process. It's a process you can do on pen and paper. It's more convenient to do it with code, but you can do data science without that. We could probably come up with a BERT algorithm for you without, on pen and paper. Is it more convenient to use code? Sure. 10 times more convenient, 100 times more convenient. But it's not a requirement. So 619, you're kind of, falling into the same trap that most people do, right? That they immediately go from, I want to learn data science to I must learn coding. Or even worse, I must learn Google Analytics or AWS or some cloud tool or whatever, right? Azure. But you don't need any of that. That's not data science. So think about those first steps I told you, because like I said, now you're thinking about how you're going to get to an answer. Now you're thinking about the methodology. So take a step back and just say, what am I looking at here? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? How can I set up my data for success to reaching the goal that I want? See, now you're having an entirely different conversation, right? And you're not Googling it, right? You're actually thinking, you're actually applying yourself. And that's where you're going to win. That's where you're going to learn more and develop, and good things will come from that process, right? So let me know what you think about 619, or if anybody else in the chat wants to give an opinion. Certainly, certainly welcome to do that. Or you're just welcome to introduce yourself and say hello, and let us know if there's something that we can help you with. So right now we are basically past the halfway point of summer, right? I mean, summer will be over here in about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever the case may be. And the next thing you know, we'll be in the fall, and the next thing you know, we'll be talking about the new year, right? And then, oh my gosh, where did 2025 go? So lots of things coming up here to kind of start winding down the year, winding down the summer, winding down the year. I know that when I was working in corporate life, the last quarter is always very busy. You're trying to meet goals, trying to meet deadlines. So for me, it always felt like after Labor Day, which in the US is the first Monday in September, after Labor Day, it just feels like the year flies by, right? The whole year is just gone before you know it. So hope that you're doing well. Hope that you have plans to close out your summer in a strong way. And again, if there's anything we can help you with, let me know. That's the whole point of the chat. 619 says, oh no, I don't have anyone can guide me to start, so I just search and find information on the internet. I'm really interested in machine learning, but I might learn it in the wrong way. Well, that's okay. That's okay. And look, 619, I'm not trying to pick on you or anything. I appreciate your contributions to the chat. I'm just kind of giving you my view on it because I see this a lot, right? And it's usually driven by one of these idiot influencers who's trying to sell you a course or trying to scare you into, oh yeah, data science is so hard. You got to know so much code. You got to know so much math. Data science is a process. It's the application of the scientific method to data, right? So if you really want to start somewhere 619, go ahead and apply yourself and understand the scientific method, right? And then think about what that means for data. Like, what does it mean to run an experiment when all you have is data? Like, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean experiments with data? Like, if you have those types of thoughts and those types of conversations with yourself, now you're on a path where you're learning data science. And you can do that away from Python or anything, any code, right? So yeah, this is obviously one of my big. I don't want to say a pet peeve, but it's definitely something I believe strongly about because I really do think that social media and all the idiot influencers have created like a fundamental misunderstanding of data science because they've never done data science themselves, right? But anyways, that's just what I think. 619. But then again, I'm just an old guy talking on the internet, so who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Last call for anybody in the chat that wants to say hello. Well, good questions today, guys. Really appreciate that. Um, I'm going to flip over to Instagram. You're welcome to join me there. But as always, please take care of yourselves, take care of your families. The crazy world out there. But I will see you again tomorrow. Take care, everybody.